Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So we've got a bunch of new cards to look at today, including a couple of legendaries, so let's take a look. Wretched Reclaimer is a 3 mana 3/3. This is a very strong 3-drop. We've seen a few of these. And this one's for Priest. It's Battlecry, destroy a friendly minion, then return it to life with full health. So the card isn't great on its own. It's okay if you have to play it as a 3 mana 3/3, but it needs other cards on the board to be very good. And we're thinking Death Rattles or Reborn minions. It's some really excellent synergies with those. It brings the minion back to full health, so if you've already made a trade with one minion, it's great to bring it back to full health, and also to kill it and trigger its Death Rattle. That is where the play will be really good. But it can also regenerate Divine Shield, so even if you've played Ziliax and you're really struggling in the game, you play Ziliax, you rush him in, you then destroy him, bring him back with Divine Shield, you can rush him in again, and then you've still got the 3/2 on the board that can gain you another 3 health. So there's a couple of really good uses you could use it with just outside of Death Rattles. But I think the main use is where you're going to be wanting to pick up strong synergies with Death Rattles. Mechanical Whelp is one, for example. You won't get much of a benefit from returning to full life, but you'll get a 7/7 coming out as well as your 3/3, and then the 2/2 still on the board that can trade in and get you another 7/7. So this is where Wretched Reclaimer is going to be very strong. Priest has got a couple of good Death Rattle synergies already. Shadowy Figure is a good one. So if you've got a Death Rattle on the board, you could copy that Death Rattle with Shadowy Figure, and it becomes a 2/2 copy of that minion. Then you could kill it with the Wretched Reclaimer, and then it comes back as a full statted copy of the original Death Rattle minion that you had, and you would trigger its Death Rattle. So there's a couple of good things you could do there. You could also use it with the Coffin Crusher. Coffin Crusher, I should say. That's a great way Death Rattle to trigger. Convincing Infiltrator is another one. Death Rattle to destroy a random enemy minion. Well, just killing that and bringing it back to full health leaves you with the 2/6 taunt on the board, still with the same Death Rattle, and you get to kill a random enemy minion. So loads of cool synergies with this card, and I just think if you can get this card will be good if you can get a free trade out of it. Even if you're stuck and you haven't got the synergies you want on the board, even if you can trade a minion in, leave it at 1 health, and then kill it and bring it back to full health, even without a Death Rattle synergy, I think it's a pretty strong play. Nice tempo play anyway. So Wretched Reclaimer, very good card for Priest. I can see this one being played in a Death Rattle type deck or Reborn, because they do have the 1 mana spell which gives any minion Reborn, so you could use that first, then this. So lots of good options, a very versatile card, and they've released a few of these 3-drops which I think we're going to see a lot of in the different classes. Next we have a Reborn minion that I'm not so excited about. This is the Kartuk Defender, 6 mana, 3 attack, 4 health, Taunt Reborn, Death Rattle restore 3 health to your hero. So basically this card is losing a lot of stats because it has Taunt Reborn and restore 3 health to your hero. The good thing about it is it's got Taunt, so when it dies you'll get that restore 3 health, then it will come back with 1 health. It'll be easy for your opponent to clear, but they still do have to clear it because it has Taunt, and then you'll restore another 3 health. So that could be a nice effect, and it could be important at certain points in the game. But I often don't like minions that trade stats for healing your hero because it doesn't help you on the board so much. This having Reborn does help it on the board, but the stats are so weak for a 6 mana play that your opponent can probably deal with it quite easily, both copies of it. And then you might not even need 6 healing, you might only have taken 2 damage, and then the healing doesn't really help you. You need the stats on the board, because if you lose the board, having 6 extra health often isn't very important if you can't catch up with the board clear. So this is a neutral minion that can go into any deck. So there will be some uses for it, because some classes who don't have healing can now have healing. Maybe Rogue would want this. It is a Death Rattle minion that they could use with Anchor. So with Anchor it could be quite nice, because you can play this on the board as a 1 mana card that dies twice and restores you for 6 health. That's pretty good for Rogue specifically. Also with the Paladin quest, you could, if this was on the board, you could make a 2/2 copy of it. So a 2/2 copy of this is very nice, because then you've got a 2 mana 2/2 with Taunt. It comes back as a 2/1, but will restore you for 6 health over those 2 deaths. So it is versatile. It does have some uses. I just think most of the time it's not going to be very good. If you're playing against an aggro deck and you put this down on turn 6, it slows them down a little bit. You get a little bit of healing, but I think the tempo loss will be too much unless you've got something to follow it up with, which a lot of classes do, to be fair. It could be a nice stall to get you to your AoE. So it could have that kind of important aspect to it. But ultimately, I find it a little bit less exciting, but it does have a few advantages, one of the most being giving healing to classes that don't already have it. Paladin, I mentioned before, doesn't necessarily need this healing, but in the quest, because the quest is playing Reborn minions, it could fit in there, especially as the hero power would synergize with it so well. So we'll see. I think at the moment I'm not too excited about it, but you know, I could be wrong. It could have a slot in a particular deck. Next, let's look at King Boris. He is a 10 mana legendary, pretty exciting. 5 attack, 5 health, and he has the battle cry. For each spell in your hand, summon a random minion of the same cost. He's a neutral legendary, so this can go into any deck. But obviously you want it to be a deck that is running spells. And not only spells, but expensive spells. Because the more expensive the spells, the more expensive your minions will be that summon from this. Ultimately, I don't think this card's very good. I think it's exciting and fun. I think there's too much randomness to it, and it's too difficult to plan around to make it work. Yes, sometimes this will be a game-winning play. Sometimes you might want to use it as like a last resort kind of play. But whatever gets summoned could probably be cleared by one board clear. And that's the problem with 10 mana spells. Now, you do have the chance of summoning Death Rattles, so that kind of plays around certain board clears, but you can't control that. So it's not a strategy. Now, you can compare this card to N'Zoth, which had a very similar effect of summoning Death Rattle minions, and it was 10 mana. N'Zoth had better stats, it was a 5/7. But also you could control which minions went into what N'Zoth summoned. So you could summon very powerful minions like Sylvanas at the time, and it was just an amazing play at that point. This, however, just summoning random minions and having the requirement of you having spells in your hand, I think is too much. I think it's too much to make it playable. Now, what do you need to make this good? You could have, let's say, 2 4-cost spells in your hand, and then you would probably get stat value enough for this 10 drop. So you get 2 4-drops along with the 5/5. It's not a great play, to be honest, but it's kind of alright for that much. But there's potential for you to have 6 10 mana spells in your hand and then play this, and then you summon 7 10 drops. That's the dream, but the 10 drops could all be 5/5s. Like, because they could be King Boris, because it's just random, you don't know. That won't happen, but you know what I mean. So, what decks can play this? Big Spell Mage. The Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron is a 10 mana spell, so yes, you could use that. There are lots of other big spells. Across lots of different classes, you can have big spells. But it doesn't have to be big, it could be a bunch of small spells. If you had, as long as you're summoning 6 other minions with this, maybe if they're ranging from 2 to 7 mana spells, you could get a pretty nice board from this card. Which classes can you do it in though? I mentioned Mage. Big Spell Mage would be good. Big Spell Mage did have Dragoncaller Alana, which is a similar card to this, that summoned 5/5s based on how many spells over 5 mana you played. And that often wasn't that great. And then when you look at this card and consider those spells have to be in your hand to make it work, it just makes it feel even worse than Dragoncaller Alana to me. But other classes that can make it work. Priest has some very expensive spells. Their new Plague is 9 mana. They've obviously got Mind Control at 10 mana. Shaman, I think, will probably be the best place to play this because it is a battle cry. And if you've played it with Agatha the Witch, it's not very hard to get a handful of spells. So you're going to be summoning a lot of minions with this. But Shaman has a lot of lower cost cards, so it's going to be a lot of low cost minions. But ultimately, the stats will probably build up to be a pretty nice play for 10 mana. It also works with Shudderwock because it is a battle cry. But do you really want Shudderwock to be playing King Boris again? Because part of the strength of Shudderwock is a little bit like N'Zoth, is you could control what battle cries go into your Shudderwock a little bit more. So do you want to be summoning these random minions instead of other minions that you could summon off of battle cries? I don't know. I think it's fun. I think it's cool. I think it would be great in some cases. Sometimes you'll randomly generate it and think, oh, this is amazing. But there's too much randomness to make this a good strategy. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Probably the most important thing of King Boris, though, is its nerf to Conjurer's Calling, because Conjurer's Calling is such a huge part of the meta at the moment. Well, now any 10 drops, you could potentially just get 2 5/5s, which is still not bad. But in the case of Conjurer's Calling, it's a huge nerf to that deck. So I'm pretty pleased to see that, actually. Next, let's take a look at a rogue minion. This is a 4 mana 4/4 pirate, which is quite important, called the Saket Sapper. It's rare, and it has Death Rattle. Return a random enemy minion to your opponent's hand. So this card is essentially a 4-mana 4/4 with a 2-mana sap attached to it as a death rattle. If it was a battle cry, I would say this card is awesome. But because it's a death rattle, I don't really see it being that strong because your opponent gets to decide when it happens. And if you're deciding when it happens, it means you're trading it into a minion. So if you kill that minion, then you won't get the death rattle unless they've got other minions on the board. And you know, if you don't kill the minion, then you might just damage it and sap it. So then you've just kind of wasted the 4/4 stats where you could have just sapped that minion in the first place. So it's a bit more complicated than that. But honestly, I think it's got too much potential to do what you don't want. So your opponent can also play around it, and in a meta that's going to have a lot of lackeys, you could just end up sapping a lackey back to your opponent's hand, which they will be very happy about because lackeys have very strong battle cries. They only cost 1 mana, they can just play it again. So sap is one of the most powerful spells in the game in terms of tempo. So another way to do sap shouldn't be discounted. I just don't really see it being attached to a 4-mana minion. Now, it is a pirate, so it does have the other pirate synergies as well. You can draw it with Raiding Party. You can pull it out of Hook Tusk. So pulling this from Hook Tusk is actually quite good because it's just a nice statted minion. So I'm not too convinced on this card, but in a meta that's going to be playing lots of big death rattles, maybe it could be quite good because if your opponent's got just huge death rattle minions on the board, then sapping any of those back to the hand is pretty nice because it doesn't trigger their death rattle and they have to spend the mana to play it again. So that could be an option. I think the card does have very good synergies with Anchor, which is a new legendary for Rogue, which changes when you play it. It changes minions in your hand to a 1-mana 1/1. So this card being played as a 1-mana 1/1 would be much better because if you're absolutely desperate, it's kind of another way to play sap. You could play the 1-mana 1/1 on the board and backstab it, and then you sap a big minion of your opponent's. That could be a situation that you want to do. But other than that, I don't know about this one, to be honest. I don't think it's very strong. Next, let's look at a card for Mage, which I do think is very powerful. This is Flame Ward. It's a secret. It's 3 mana. After a minion attacks your hero, deal 3 damage to all enemy minions. This is very nice. It's very much like Explosive Trap for Hunter, which is 2 mana, do 2 damage to all minions. But this one is slightly different in it's after a minion attacks your hero. So basically, you will take the face damage first, then it will kill or do 3 damage to everything. And 3 damage to everything is a significant amount of damage. Especially if there's going to be a lot of Murloc decks. We've seen some good Murlocs being introduced for this expansion. There were some good Murlocs in the last expansion. So I expect there to be Murlocs. Token Druid as well, this is pretty good against because it's just a nice way of being able to deal damage to the whole board at very low cost of 3 mana. The other thing is, because it's a secret, people will always have to play around this, which can make your opponent do suboptimal plays. And yeah, you're just having to always play around this card is going to be quite frustrating. It's just another way for Mage to deal with aggro and token decks. And if the meta becomes very strong in that way, even if you're not running secret synergies, you might just put 2 of these in your deck to play them or discover them off of Arcane Keysmith. There's so many good ways you could use this, but because of how powerful the other Mage synergy cards we've seen with secrets, I see this being played alongside those and creating a pretty powerful Mage deck. This is a good secret. This is probably one of the best ones we've seen in a while, I think. It's got potential to do a lot of damage to your opponent's board if they're going wide. So yeah, if you play this at the right time, it can be game winning. Next, let's take a look at Siamat, which is a 7-mana 6/6 elemental, which has the battle cry of gain 2 of Rush, Taunt, Divine Shield, or Wind Fury, your choice. So this is a very good card. It's pretty simple. You just play it on the board and then pick one of those 2. It's very versatile in that respect, so you can pick those to match what the board state's like. Very nice kind of catch-up or control card. The examples are, you can, if you get Rush and Divine Shield, it's deal 6 damage to a minion, summon a 6/6. For 7 mana, that's very good. This is the sort of card you would love to have. It's a strong card and it's neutral. I don't think it's on the same power level as Ziliax. I think not having Lifesteal kind of takes that away from it. I think it probably would be too good with Lifesteal because then you could take Wind Fury, Lifesteal, or Rush and Lifesteal, and so many decks would use it. So because of that, I don't think it's as good as Ziliax, but it could be like the Ziliax of this set, the neutral minion, legendary minion that can go into so many different decks, because I think it can. It's got that kind of potential. The stat value you get for playing it with the different options is really nice. It's a good card. It's a solid card. I expected to see a lot of play. Now, where can you get extra value from this? Well, you can get this from Shudderwock. So it is a battle cry, so it's a really cool battle cry to put into a Shudderwock deck, because it will gain 2. I think it will gain 2 random ones, Shudderwock will, but it will buff your Shudderwock. But also the Shaman Quest, because you could then play this, use your hero power, and then this battle cry would trigger twice, and then you could pick 4 times what you get. So I think that would be really good. I hope that's how the battle cry works. So I imagine you'll get to pick 4. I don't think it will pick the same, give you the same 2 twice, which obviously would do nothing. I think you would get to pick 4 times, and then it's a pretty good card with Wind Fury, Rush, and Divine Shield and Taunt. That's nice. I'm glad it hasn't got charge. It doesn't need charge. This sort of card would be awful with charge, so I'm glad they haven't done that. It's got Wind Fury. So it's not. It can be compared to Alakir, but Alakir is never really played unless it's for the face damage. Unless you can buff him, buff his attack, and go face, it's not really the sort of card that gets played. This, however, I like it. It's really cool. It is a battle cry, so if you summon it outside of battle cries, it's just a 7 mana 6/6. So if you evolve into this or something, it's a 6/6. But yeah, very nice. I don't really see too much synergies with it being an elemental right now, but it'll be in the game for a couple of years. We might see some more elementals come down the line. So a pretty good card. I expect this one to be the neutral legendary that if you've got some spare dust, you will craft. Alright, so that's all the cards for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think about all the cards, and I'll see you in the next one.